I can't do this anymore. I need a sponsorship.
For a sponsorship, I'll read Gone with the Wind.
Today we're reading Gone with the Wind, brought to you by Hims Vitamins.
Brought
And
to
they
you by
would.
BetterHelp.
Brought to you by BetterHelp. Speaking of Gone with the Wind, you'll be crocheting with the wind with the Woobles. Hey, welcome to the Panelists, a bookish deep dive podcast where we take bookish genres and tropes and overanalyze them to the point that people think we hate reading, but at least we have fun doing it. This is episode 4, and today we are going to be talking about Wuthering Heights. My name is Jaysen.
My name is Niah.
My name is Panelists.
And my name is Lizzy.
Welcome back. If this is your first time here, or if you just haven't been here for a month and a half because that's the last time we recorded a podcast, you might be wondering what this podcast is about. So we had this crazy idea that we wanted to do deep dive into the history of the romance genre in books and explore it, where the tropes come from, how it has evolved over the years, how things written hundreds of years ago have affected what we've read today. And we came up with that idea in an Uber, and here we are months later doing it, which is really exciting. So
Uber can sponsor us. I'm kidding.
Yeah, Uber. This episode is, we're looking for a sponsor for the podcast, by the way. So if your name is Uber, or really there's no depths we won't delve for a sponsorship. So if you have, like a shady back alley AI company or a vitamin that is basically just a sugar cube that you claim cures everything, we are ready and waiting with open arms.
If
Open
the
arms
price is
and
right.
open hearts. And open hearts.
Open hearts is better than what I thought you were going to say, so that's great.
I censored myself. Yeah.
So this past month, we read Wuthering Heights. Now, I want to say from the top, we were fully aware that this was not a romance, but we knew that it's important to the history of romance genre, or maybe it's not. We're going to discuss that. But somebody had told us that it was important to the romance genre, and we left it up to all of you of whether or not we should read it, and you all said yes. So here we are. So everything today in today's episode, you are responsible for. I just want you to remember that. Before we jump into the history and the summary and really get into this book, I want to ask, as our opening question for today, what was your experience reading this book? Like, what was the journey you went through of reading Wuthering Heights? Because we all read it, I think, for the first time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this was a first time read for all of us, so I'm so curious. How did it go?
I tried to read this. I've told this story before, how I was reading a bunch of classics like early on in high school. So I'd read Jane Eyre, I had read a bunch of Jane Austen, and I tried to read Wuthering Heights, and I immediately bounced. 15-year-old muddiness was like, hell no. And I had carried that with me throughout. That feeling of this isn't for me pretty strongly, considering how little of it I read and how many years ago that was. But picking it back up for this project and reading it, I was like, damn, that girl was smart, because hell no is exactly the experience that I'm feeling right now reading this. And I don't know, there was a part of me that was trying to see it with a more mature perspective and to think of it as a classic and to kind of contextualize it. But the experience of reading it, just did I have fun reading it? No, I did not. And I complained often and loudly in the group chat about having to read this. So
You were not alone in complaining. This was a wild experience to me because I normally would have DNF'd this book immediately. Just because I wasn't vibing with it, and it was just really hard to get into. And I tried it in several different methods before I was like, okay, this is clicking, because I was like, I don't understand what is happening. I tried reading it with my eyes. I tried reading it with my ears and my eyes. I tried reading it with just my ears. Jaysen, you recommended the Spotify audiobook, which it's the first time I've listened to an audiobook on Spotify. Spotify sponsor us. And it was a great... But I don't know why it was just such a struggle to get into, to read the book and just comprehend what was happening. I was like, am I smart? I think I am. I'm very successful. I've read books before.
Not you having to self-coach yourself.
Yes. And it was very interesting experience, trying to go through the different formats to try to find a way to read this book that made sense to my brain. So it was just a very different experience than any other book I've read.
That's actually so good to hear, because I started reading the physical copy couldn't do that. Went through 2 audiobook narrators, couldn't do that. And finally found one and I was like, okay, I think I can tell the characters apart. Apparently I have read this book. I went back and I have like 17-year-old me rated it 5 stars.
Young Lizzy was like,
Really?
absolutely yes.
Yeah, I was looking and I was like, I think I mixed up the titles of something else. I don't know. But I don't know how I was feeling. I think I messaged you guys in the group chat. I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling right now. All of my updates every few chapters, I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to see it through.
You made a TikTok where you were listening to it while you were like doing a craft or something, and at one point you like looked up in the TikTok, you were like, did she just get kidnapped? Yeah, she did. Yeah,
Jaysen,
this
I was gonna
was
say, what about you?
one of the most interesting reading experiences I've ever had in my adult life. So a couple things happened. I started it with the Audible audiobook, and I got about 8 chapters in, and I was just like, I have no idea what's going on. I don't understand. Like, this shouldn't be this hard. Because I remember when we read Jane Eyre, I remember saying this was so readable, especially compared to like Pride and Prejudice. I was like, this was such an easy read. It just felt like such a bingeable read. So I'm like, how is this person, who is the sister of that person, writing in a way that sounds like a foreign language to me? I don't understand. And so I stopped reading it and I was like, I'm going to have to figure out something else. I have to restart this book. So at the same time, I have been really, really into right now, like gothic dark fantasy that is like, I've been reading a lot of like gothic dark fantasy that has to do with like being in like a decaying old castle that's like falling apart and kind of the claustrophobia of the characters kind of going crazy within. And it's like a very specific niche that is kind of hard to find. So one night I'm on Reddit looking for like new, I'm like, what else is like this? So like at the same time as reading this, I was reading another book called Titus Groan, which is part of this trilogy called Gormenghast, which came out in the 40s, which is that. It's like a dark medieval fantasy set in a castle, this like sprawling castle, and all the characters are like a little bit crazy, like Alice in Wonderland style. And I'm like, I'm looking for more books like this that have this vibe. And one of the books that came up in the list was Wuthering Heights. And I was like, oh, I think I need to adjust how I'm thinking about this book, because that is, I would not have correlated these two. So then at the same time as that, I went over to the Spotify audiobook and restarted it with that new frame of mind. And the hard thing about the Audible audiobook, because I'm assuming we all kind of did the same one, is that she doesn't use any voices for any characters, which I think sometimes is fine. But when you have characters, like when you have POVs within POVs and characters aging and different generations of characters that have the same name, we need some context and we need some voices to illustrate all of that, right? And so I went over to the Spotify audiobook with like a different perspective of what this book was, and I ended up liking it a lot more than I originally thought. Because originally I was like, I'm not going to be able. I also was like, is there Spark Notes? Is that still a thing? Am I about to look up the summary? Because what is happening in this book? And ended up like finally getting through it because of like a new perspective and listening to a different audiobook. But man, it was a journey. Finishing this book was a journey.
It was like Inception, like the different POVs. I was like, this is a story inside of a story inside of a story.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it took me starting the book 3 different times to realize that.
I think an early thing that I did that helped after that opening chapter was just look up a family tree. Not since Game of Thrones have I had to have the family tree next to what I was like consuming to be like, like, oh, sister, aunt, wife, cousin, daughter. Like that was the level of like, that was a thing that I did that finally like made it click a little bit more in my brain, was just being able to see who was related to who, and the fact that even though they were all mostly related, they were still marrying each other. And so I was like, okay, cousin, husband, or, you know, like that, that kind of thing.
My cousin / husband / best friend. I don't think anybody in this book is a best friend. The other thing that was kind of wild, not to get into the controversy, the other thing that was wild about reading this book is that we were reading this alongside the discourse around the release of Alchemized. And I have not read Alchemized. I read the sample that you can read online, and I was like, woof, I'm not going to read this. But so much of how people are describing what they like about that book or what they don't like about that book reminded me of what I was reading in Wuthering Heights. So a little bit I was like, oh, am I reading Alchemized just in the Wuthering Heights world? Like there's whole videos of people being like, can't understand what's going on. Here's your primer, and I was like, oh yeah, I really can't understand what's going on with the book I'm reading. So it was like this very weird uh, feeling of like, if that makes sense, like that people were
No,
talking
it
about a
makes
book that's a
sense.
different book than the book I'm reading, but they were having the same conversations about that book that I was having about this book in my head, which I thought was
Yeah.
really interesting.
But one is a classic and one is a reworked fan fiction. So,
And
well,
honestly, though, like to our original idea of like why we would include this in a romance podcast, because I agree it is a disservice to like read this like a romance, and you have to kind of contextualize it differently in terms of its like gothic origins and in terms of like the anti-hero and the anti-heroine. But it is it does need to be discussed when talking about the larger romance genre, because we still have these through lines and we're still having these discussions, because you could ask a bunch of people whether or not Alchemized is a romance. And that the answer to that question, I think, is super related to the answer to whether or not Wuthering Heights is, or how much it is. So it definitely has its place here in this conversation.
On that note, let's jump in. Let's get a little bit more context about Wuthering Heights. So we're going to start with a brief history of this book and where it came from and why it is and why this one sister seems so much more messed up than the other. I don't know what happened there, but
let's make sure we talk about the birth order too. I think that's really important and historically relevant.
Slow your
I'm
roll
just
down.
saying.
Slow your
so
roll.
Marnus, please take us through the history of Wuthering Heights.
This one's going to be a little shorter, I think, than previous episodes, because Wuthering Heights was published the very same year as Jane Eyre. So the context is very much historically the same as we discussed last episode. Not to, plug our own podcast, but go give that one a listen if you haven't already. The very brief recap is that at this time, Queen Victoria is on the throne, the working class is growing restless, and the promises of the Industrial Revolution are looking a little hollow. So unemployment is rising, the potato famine is raging, and meanwhile, Victorian sort of morality has a very tight grip on society. Emily Bronte, who is the author of Wuthering Heights, was born in 1818, and she was the fifth of 6 Bronte children.
So in the middle. That is technically a middle child.
Thank you, Jaysen.
If you're not the youngest and you're not the oldest, that leaves the middle.
I'm a middle child, so like the middle child slander, it's coming from inside the house. Okay,
I also am a middle child, and the fact that we both hated this as middle children, I don't want to claim her, is what I'm saying.
She's middle child adjacent because she's not right in the middle. She's like a middle child tangent.
Middle child.
So Emily's mother died. What a segue. Middle children. Emily's mother died when she was 3 years old, and her 2 older sisters also died shortly after being sent to a harsh charity school. We talked about that when we were talking about Jane Eyre, because a portion of that was put into Jane Eyre. Emily is often considered to be the most private and mysterious of the sisters. She worked as a teacher for a short while, but then became too physically and emotionally ill from stress to continue. She rarely left home. She hated social gatherings. There's not a lot of work outside of Wuthering Heights that survives her. We have some poetry, but not even like letters or journals or anything like that. And she just spent a lot of time alone, walking in the moors around her house with her dog, who she loved a lot, apparently. Is this giving you, are you guys like context, like, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, I
It's
just
all coming
imagine
together.
this book was so exhausting to read. I can only imagine what it took out of a person to write it. So I don't blame her for this being like her book. Like, that's the
She needed her
one.
rest.
I'm done. Mama
I
needs
can't
to
believe she
sleep.
loved dogs and wrote this book.
Yeah.
We all have our soft spots. Emily, Anne, and Charlotte spent lots of time together inventing elaborate worlds, and it will surprise no one to hear that Emily's stories were often very dark, tragic, and violent. So there's like a very like straight line to her juvenilia to Wuthering Heights. She published this in 1847 under the pseudonym Ellis Bell. It was paired in a double volume with Anne's Agnes Grey. And the critics at the time were confused. One newspaper called it a strange, inartistic story full of brutal men and morose women. Other critics called it coarse or even disgusting, doubting that a woman could have written something so cruel. Those who had anything nice to say about the book talked about it being very readable or like the power behind the writing, but the entire thing kind of confused people. It defied genre, it refused to tell readers what to feel, and it unsettled a lot of people. The hits keep coming for Emily because 1 year after she published this, she died of tuberculosis, an ailment that we can probably guess she caught from her brother, who had also died of tuberculosis only 3 months before, and then Anne died of tuberculosis just 5 months after, leaving Charlotte the last surviving Bronte sibling. Emily's death was, like I said, just 1 year after publication, so she really had no idea, especially after that like critical reception where people were like, what is this? So she like never knew within her lifetime that her novel, her only novel, would become one of the most enduring works of English literature. And as we've talked about, Wuthering Heights isn't a romance, but we included it here because of its influence on the genre, seen both in its brooding anti-hero and its wild anti-heroine, which, both I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. You know how like sometimes an author writes like really dark stuff and then you find out about them and they just live like the best, happiest life with their golden retriever on the countryside? That is everything we just learned about her seems very on brand.
Yes, losing her mother very early in life, her older siblings, being the one that was the most reclusive. Her siblings were out there doing the same thing that she was doing, but in a more like extroverted way. Charlotte, especially, I think. She was just walking around her like home with her dog and writing these like really violent, weird stories. Emily Bronte, everyone.
It kind of
I mean,
makes me
but
like it a little more.
I guess at the end of the
I
day,
know.
her work survived, so
Yes.
Yeah.
worth it? I almost feel bad for her and all the things we're about to say about her work, but that's fine. It's been a while.
I'm separating how I feel about her as an author from how I feel about this book.
Oh, you're separating the art from the
Because
artist? That's what
I
you're going
am.
to do?
And I've heard that we can do that and that it's okay. It works out well.
Yeah. Wuthering Heights was actually written by Heathcliff, so for any of our readers or viewers, what are we doing here? Not a book. For any of our viewers or listeners who have not read Wuthering Heights, which at this point I don't know that we've convinced anybody to pick it up, but if you haven't read Wuthering Heights, you're probably wondering, what is this book about? And I don't believe in bullying, but I did ask Lizzy to give us a summary of this book, which I'm excited to hear.
Because I'm so excited to relive all of this right now.
I'm really excited for a summary because I think I really want to know what happened in this book.
I
And
really
I read the
got the
whole
summary
thing.
wrong. Like, if I mixed up any of the names, someone just like raise a hand. Because I
It
literally
won't be
wrote the
me.
first thing
There
in
are
my
only
summary.
5 names in the whole book.
The Catherine, Kathy, Linton.
It's
Not to be
fine.
confused with Hareton.
I can't even say Thrushcross Grange. There are just too many. But my first thing on my paper is this book needs an exorcism. So I'm glad that's the attitude I'm taking into this summer. I literally wrote, this book needs an exorcism. It's not a love story. It's a revenge thriller starring emotionally unstable Victorian teenagers and adults. That's my opening line. So just assume there's a bunch of violence and hatred mixed into every interaction I'm about to list in this very villain origin story featuring a family tree that's like a maze that's also on fire. We begin with Lockwood, a newcomer renting Thrushcross Grange, who visits his landlord Heathcliff at a nearby estate of Wuthering Heights. But things get spooky. The house is cold and the people even colder, and Lockwood ends up having a nightmare featuring a ghostly girl named Catherine. Shaken, Lockwood asks the housekeeper Nellie to explain what's going on, and that's when the real story begins, because this is Nellie telling Lockwood and Lockwood writing the story down in a journal. So then we get into the real story, which is years earlier. Mr. Earnshaw, owner of Wuthering Heights, brings home an orphan boy, Heathcliff. The Earnshaw children, Catherine and Hindley, react very differently. Catherine grows close to Heathcliff, and Hindley grows jealous. So when Mr. Earnshaw dies, Hindley inherits the house and demotes Heathcliff to a servant status. Still, Heathcliff and Catherine share what's described as an otherworldly relationship, which in other words, they're just freaky. And kind of very obsessive. So things spiral there. Catherine spends time with the Lintons at Thrushcross Grange. They're very wealthy, polished, proper, and she eventually agrees to marry Edgar Linton, not because she loves him more than Heathcliff, but because marrying Heathcliff would have sort of degrade her, which he overhears, vanishes, returns 3 years later, rich, educated, and burning for revenge, and apparently very handsome. Was described a couple times. His first target is Hindley. Heathcliff lends him money and Hindley gambles it all away, making Heathcliff the mortgagee of Wuthering Heights. After that, he seduces Edgar's sister. I'm using this very lightly because he tries to kill her dog in front of her and she's warned by like 3 different people to not love him. They still get married. He treats her horribly to kind of get back at Edgar and Catherine. Catherine is emotionally torn apart by Heathcliff's return. She becomes agonizingly sick physically and mentally and dies shortly after giving birth to a daughter, Cathy Linton. Heathcliff, still out for blood. This is when I actually started getting into the story too and understanding what's happening is about this point. He raises Hindley's son, Hareton, in ignorance and cruelty just as Hindley treated him. He also gains custody of his son that Isabella tried hiding from him, Linton Heathcliff, who is a sickly boy he plans to use for more revenge. We have a time jump again. Years pass. Young Cathy grows up sheltered and spirited. Heathcliff tricks her into marrying Linton so he can seize the Grange when Linton dies, which he does shortly after the most coarse wedding because Cathy was held hostage while knowing her dad was dying. At this point, Heathcliff owns both properties, but his revenge has left him empty. Haunted by Catherine's ghost, obsessed with her memory, he begins to unravel. Meanwhile, young Cathy and Hareton, 2 children from the wreckage of the previous generation, slowly form a bond. Despite their terrible childhoods and relationship, they choose kindness over cruelty, love over vengeance. Cathy begins teaching Hareton how to read. Heathcliff, increasingly consumed by his longing for Catherine and losing in everything else, stops eating, stops fighting, and we get kind of what could be described as a happy ending, which is him dying.
I was happy.
I was happy. Some say peacefully, some say haunted. He's buried next to Catherine and Edgar. And in the end, Cathy and Hareton plan to marry, move to the Grange, finally breaking this weird cycle of revenge and pain. So just for reference, if you tally up the damage, it's 3 haunted bedrooms, 6 corpses, 3 plot twists involving cousins, and numerous lives ruined, one of which was mine, the reader. Thank you.
Amazing. Amazing.
Thank you so much. Did I get it right, though?
You did great. Yeah. I especially liked the math at the end. Really brought it
That
home.
brought it home for me.
Thank you. Thank you.
I feel like, Lizzy, I feel like you would have done really well at like having to write essays in school, like in English class. In conclusion,
In conclusion, I feel like I'm writing book reports, like 4th grade
Yes.
book reports. Makes me happy.
yeah,
5th grade at least.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, 4th grade, but a
Give
5th grade
yourself
reading
some
level.
credit.
So
Yeah.
we've already talked about the experience of reading this book for all of us, but now I want to get into like the actual book. So let's just first off, overall thoughts. And what would you give this book out of 5? Like, now that you've finished it, now that you've read it, where does this book rate on the Goodreads /Storygraph rating system?
That's such a hard question for me to answer because it's like I always rate on quality and enjoyment. Like I combine those 2 things in my overall rating so that when you see a 5-star for me, you know that I think it was a good book and also I liked it. And so this is kind of a story that like, I don't know, sort of objectively standing back, I'm like, I see why this is a classic in a lot of ways, but like my enjoyment was probably down like at a 2. I would never give this book a 2-star, but that's how much I liked it. So what do I do with that information? I don't know. Maybe like a 3, a 3.5. People are going to come for me. I already know it.
I don't think that's too crazy. I gave it a 3 out of 5. And what I said on Threads, and it is definitely how I still like it is the way that I keep thinking about this book, which is that it is the most I've ever enjoyed a book I did not enjoy. I didn't like anything that was happening in the book, but I also liked the experience of reading it, I think, a little bit, or maybe that's the other way around. I think the writing is really, like, I like the writing, and I do think there is a story that is really interesting being told here, and there's a lot of depth to it, but at the same time, it was like an oppressive book to read. Like, it felt like it was like, it wanted me to hate it. Like, I felt like this book really did not want me to enjoy it.
And maybe on purpose too, right? Like there's an element here of like how things in books can be done purposefully and still not be enjoyable to read. And ultimately, like when I'm reading a book, like I said, I have to take my enjoyment into it. So like, did, Emily want us to feel that oppression of like what she was creating in this like crumbling haunted location in the moors and the Gothic atmosphere? It's very likely that like you are supposed to feel this way, and that throughout its history people have felt this way, going back to the original critics, but also it was not enjoyable. So like I don't know, that is what it is in terms of my experience.
Niah looked so guilty while you two were talking that I have to know your rating.
This is a safe space.
Okay.
Safe. It's safe.
I'm just gonna be honest. It was mid. Okay, like it was. I feel bad for saying that. It's gonna sound so bad. I'm gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it, and then I'm gonna edit it later. Okay, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it again in a way that we can put in the podcast. I wish she had lived, so she hadn't died so early, so she could have written something else, because it would have been better than this, like by a lot. Because like this was like,
it's giving debut.
It's giving debut. And like, because there were some lines where I was like, oh, that's fantastic. I was like, this is written so beautifully. And like, I'd go back and I'd like, oh, I reread certain parts of it because I was like, I love the way that sounds. I love this, right? And I like, it was so atmospheric. The characters are like interesting. Like they're all terrible, and I like the choice that she like intentionally made to make everyone bad. Essentially, to make everyone have like all of these really flawed characters. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I hate this, but there's something there, right? I wish she had lived long enough to write. Well, see, that sounds bad to be like, oh, she lived long enough so she could write another book for me to read. But like, I was just feeling a little bit guilty about thinking, man, I wish she had like not died, so I'd have something else to like judge her against other than just this book that I did not enjoy. Like I didn't enjoy the experience of reading it. I would rate it maybe a 2.5 because I thought, again, like written very beautifully. Like it was, obviously this is a very skilled like writer, but I hated reading it, and it somehow felt like the longest book I've ever read in my life. It never ended. I was like, I kept looking, like it was just so long. I was like, thank God I was like, she's dead, so this book is about to end. And then I looked at the timeline. I was like, what is happening? I was like distraught. Like I paused the audiobook and I got up and I like walked around and I was like, no, you got this. Like I had to give myself like a pep talk to be like, okay, it's really not that long. You're listening at 3.5 times speed. Like you can do this.
I was too.
And it never ended. And like, it was just that like every single time I thought the book was going to end, it didn't end, and it kept going. And like that, for me, that experience of like just being like, oh, I'm almost there, and then not being there, that ruined this for me in a way that no matter what, this couldn't come back from.
And it's only like a 12-hour long audiobook. I think that's important to note
like,
here, is that it's not a long book.
13 hours and 25 minutes. It's about there. It's about there. I'm not even joking. I'm pretty sure that's exactly it.
And you felt close. Every single one of those minutes.
And I did. And that's why I'm like, it is a 2.5 for me. Like I know that people are going to be like, oh my God, how could you say that? Like you have no taste. I don't care.
I don't think so. I think this is a very divisive book in general. I think there are a lot of people who really hate this book. Yeah. Even when I talked online about the fact that I was reading it, like every other comment was like, oh my God, I love that book. And then the next book comment is like, I hate that book. So like, I think I don't think you're alone. I think a lot of people are.
I feel like
giving
also
this a 2.5 or lower.
When I look at the way that people like talk about what they love about this book, and I like having just read it, I'm like, what you love is the idea of this book. Read it again. Now.
Read it.
Like read it. No, like no,
now.
seriously. And like, when is the last time you read it? Was it in high school? Was it like 20 years? No, seriously, where I'm like, when is the last time you read it? And did you read it because someone told you this was such a romantic and tragic love story? Or did you like, I don't know. That's the thing too, where I'm like, do you like this book or do you like the idea of this book? Either is fine because you can enjoy what you want to enjoy, but don't gaslight me into thinking that this is
I
a
actually
book
had
that I'll
like
enjoy.
the experience where reading about what people like about this, and even the people who say, I know it's not a romance, but I loved it. Like the sentiment seems to be, I love watching terrible people do terrible things, like for the people who
Mm.
really get on with this. And there's a lot of like love for unreliable narrators in terms of like
Yeah.
people who enjoy this book. But it's kind of that thing where even where I'm like seeing what other people liked about this, I'm like, you're listing all the things I didn't like about this. And so it's like, not that I don't get where you're coming from. It's you're creating a laundry list of like why I kept docking stars as we went along.
You said, no, I agreed with you. This book has those things, and I
Correct.
hate them. Yeah,
Correct.
we're on the same page.
Lizzy, out of 5, what did you give this lovely book?
You know, I gave it 4 stars. I
All
liked
right,
it.
okay.
Oh, okay, Lizzy.
But you docked your original rating from a
I
5
did.
to
I
a
had to
4.
take it because the experience reading it is terrible. I felt like I was bonding with the characters and we were all trapped here.
Trauma bonding.
We
is
were
what that's
trauma
called?
bonding.
Mm-hmm.
You gave it a 4 because you trauma bonded with the characters. Oh my god.
Lizzy,
That's exactly
that
what it
is
is. I can't
such
even
a
say
you thing to
something nice
say.
about it.
I love you so much.
I'm like, I can't even say a single good thing about this book.
I want to bully you out of this opinion if I'm
But
really
you-
honest right now.
But you got to the
Okay,
end and you
actually,
said, we
what
went
my
through this
rating
together,
is at
4
the end.
stars.
You can't say a single good thing about it. 4 stars. Because we suffered and we made it through.
That's why I think we should check back in at the end of the podcast to see if you guys can convince me out of it.
Okay, we will.
Oh my god. Wow,
Jason,
okay.
you said 3 stars though?
Yeah, I said
you'd
3.
give it a 3.
To me, this reminded me a lot of I play a lot of video games, and there's this video game series called The Last of Us, which got made into a TV show, and it's it's won tons of acclaim. It's got an incredible story. There's 2 games, incredible story, and I played through both of them, and the entire time I was playing them, I was like, I hate playing this. Like, it's so miserable. It's so depressing. I'm not having fun, but I'm playing through it because the story, I'm so captivated. And I felt that way about this book. Like, I was so captivated by, like, what on earth is going to happen next? But that does not mean I was having fun at any point of reading it. But I like, it's at a certain point you have to know. You're like, how does this end? Like, where do we go from here?
I needed to know he died at the end. I was like, that's how this book has to end right now. And it didn't. It went on another 30 minutes.
If he hadn't died, I would have figured out a way to push myself in that world. Like, I would have done the science, the magic, whatever. So
Not you writing Wuthering Heights fan fiction. Fix it,
and
fic.
it would be like, and then, I'll do what I need to do.
Taste mastering your way
so I
in.
can sleep at night.
I actually didn't have any experience like that with the plot or with like the curiosity of how this would end. It was very clear to me that everyone was just going to end sad and dead. And the things that kept happening, they didn't really feel like these great plot sort of happenings or whatever. It would just be kind of like, and then somebody else got abused, and then another cousin showed up. Those weren't like interesting plot points to me, and they kept happening all the time. So I didn't really have that like captivated by the story sort of thing. It started miserable, it continued miserable, it ended miserably, and there were a bunch of honestly not even that many characters. It was just the same few characters being miserable to each other,
The
and
same personalities as well.
Yes, and then
the names and the personalities.
Yes, and the second generation comes and you're like, okay, new characters, and they're just little copy pastes of their parents, and I'm like, we're doing this again. So
Speaking of plot, sorry to get us off topic. The thing that really annoyed me the entire time is that Heathcliff was like, my big plan for revenge is a multi-generational marriage scheme. Sir, you surely had time to workshop that
Listen,
one.
just because you're evil doesn't mean you're creative, okay? And that is represented in this book. There are villains and there are villain masterminds, and those are 2 different things, okay?
and then like everybody he was taking revenge on kept dying. So who's even there left to see that you got your revenge, my man? This is like
He said, I'm gonna marry your sister. My son is gonna marry your daughter. Your daughter's gonna marry your present. Like, it was so many things where it's like, and that'll get him.
And then he
Get
left
it?
the
'Cause
property
he's
back in their
dead.
name.
Let's dive into some questions. Let's
Okay.
get into some specifics. Let's really dig in here.
Right.
So the first question I want to ask, and this is something I thought about the whole time I was reading through the book, and so I wanted to pose this question to you, which is, who do you think is the main character of this book? Who is the protagonist?
Me. Because I'm the one suffering the most.
Honestly, if I had to answer this is one of the reasons that I think that this failed kind of for me as a story, because there isn't really a clear focal point, and that is made worse by the way that we are getting this story told third hand. Like,
Yeah.
not only is there not a main focal point, but we're hearing a story told about a story, and so like we're not even sitting in anybody's true perspective of what is happening, which is again something that people really enjoy here. But that for me, it just kind of leaves the whole thing feeling so like unmoored, if you will.
Wow.
I got it. Actually, okay.
I appreciated it.
Thanks. Okay. So I don't know. My question is nobody. My answer, I should say.
I guess Heathcliff. Just because he's mentioned the most, like everything sort of revolves around him. I mean, it's sad because it could be Nellie, but we don't learn anything about Nellie other than she knows everything about these people.
See, I kept thinking it was Nellie as well.
I think it was Nellie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what's
I do love
interesting,
Nellie.
first of all, how old is she? I feel like by the end of the book, she's got to be 85 years old because she's lived through so many
yeah.
generations of people.
I was
But
reading.
they all died so young, though, dude.
Oh, that's true.
I was
that's
reading
true.
about this, and like one of the things that about Nellie, which I love Nellie, and anytime that I was like laughing, it was because Nellie was just like reading somebody for filth, and I loved it. But
I
one
did
of the
like
things
Nellie a lot.
one of the things that I read was that actually part of what might have been like a bias for Nellie against Catherine was because they were around the same age. Like Nellie would have been just a little bit older as her maid, and so had to, was in a lesser station, had to watch this very beautiful, spoiled woman kind of grow up alongside her in very, very different circumstances, which I think puts a different kind of spin on the novel if you think about it that way. And it's different because when I was hearing Nellie's voice, like, on the audiobook or as I was reading, I was picturing like a matronly or a grandmotherly sort of person. But if you consider that she's more Catherine's contemporary, that relationship between the two of them definitely gets like a little more interesting.
I thought it was crazy that there are times where this book feel like it loses the reality feeling of like keeping you in this world because of how hard they have to try to keep Nellie in the scene to be able to tell you what's happening, to the point that like all of these horrible people are existing, and finally Heathcliff is like, get out, go, and she begs to stay, and then she wants to come back, and I'm like, there's got to be other jobs in this town, like this cannot be the gig.
I was like, how is she getting all her work done in the day? Like, I was like, these are huge houses. I was like, there's no way she has enough time to spend with these people, so she knows every single detail and also can get up at like 4 a.m. and do the laundry. I was like,
It did kind of feel like a good Bronte sister thing, though, of having someone working there observing these families go through all of the drama. It was reminding me a lot of Jane Eyre a little bit, but...
and it does have a very, I guess, what we'll talk about in a second, I think, is the unreliable narrator aspect of like how reliable is Nellie, right? Like is the way that she sees these characters, maybe they're like a perfectly lovely family and Nellie just like hates all of them, and so that's why she's like,
I refuse to believe.
No.
This is like when you were trying to convince me that Pamela was like, the most like self-centered or the worst character, and I'm like, no, I'm sorry.
Everybody
I
at the
can't.
party had to tell me how pretty I was because I was the prettiest at the party.
And I believe her, and I
she was
believe
right.
Pamela.
And she was
she was.
but
she quoted them.
Yeah.
that's a really good question. I was thinking about that, like when you guys were talking about like, oh, like they're the same age, like how does that change the like relationships that they had? And it's like, does that matter with the way that some of these events, right? It doesn't matter if she's like, oh, I hate Catherine. If she says Catherine was on the ground and was pretending to die when this dude came back into the room, I don't know. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, there's no... Even if she didn't throw herself on the ground and she was just like slumped in the chair, that's still pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's some of the things where it's like,
There is though like a bias that Nellie has towards against Catherine more for or against different characters. And one of the like interesting moments that like people point to as her being like biased in some way is that when Catherine is telling Heathcliff that Isabel likes him, and she's like being the worst about it, and she starts off and she says somebody like other than me like likes you the most, and Heathcliff looks at Nellie. And then and Catherine goes, "Don't look at Nellie. I'm not talking about her. Like, I'm talking about." And so people are like, "Why would Heathcliff look at Nellie, especially if she was like an older person? Like, why would he, immediately?"
That's interesting. I took that as like him like being like, what is she talking about? Can you like make sense of like what she is saying, because you're always here and you're the voice of
the busybody.
Yeah. Like because he does like go to her and is like, hey, what's going on over at the house? Like, tell me, I'm not gonna let you leave my house. I'm not gonna get nothing, you and everyone here. But that does make sense. Yeah.
It's one of the things that people point to as like this idea that like Nellie is jealous of Catherine and or maybe in love with Heathcliff.
Oh, I love the idea of hot maid Nellie. Like, I think that's great.
But she doesn't speak like very well of him.
No,
like,
no, that's
a little bit in the beginning.
It's like, and
however, she keeps staying around. Like, she keeps like giving him chances. Like, she'll be like, he's the worst, but also sneaking him in to come like do stuff. And like, there's so many ways that like, regardless of what you think about Nellie, she is like manipulating the story, and so or like she has like key decisions involved in the story that like make things what they are, because she is either like facilitating or passing information or pushing people into decisions in ways that are like the main character.
She's the main character. That's
Lizzy,
main character energy.
Lizzy, you had a revelation. I saw a light bulb go on.
If she did like him, letting him listen to Catherine say that she won't marry him because he's like a lower status is a wild move. But she does like defend him in the beginning. Eventually, towards the end, she comes to terms with all of his actions. But in the beginning, she takes his side versus Catherine almost every time. That's an interesting perspective. I was picturing her as a mom, but she probably is through all of these time jumps young.
She's hot maid Nellie, here to cause problems.
My new Halloween costume.
A new bombshell enters the villa.
Nellie.
We have talked about this a little bit, but what is this a tale of? Is it a tale of redemption? Is it a tale of despair? Is it both? Like, what is the meaning of this novel? Like, what is it a story of?
That's a really great question.
Really great question.
I'm going to let somebody else take it. I'm going to let somebody else take the floor, though. Yeah.
I wrote revenge and despair, but I feel like there has to be more than that, right?
No, I don't know if it does.
A tiny glimpse of hope at the end, but it wasn't enough to make
I don't think it was meant to be. I don't think it was meant to actually be hopeful. It didn't feel like an actual... it didn't really feel like a good ending. It just felt like it just dropped off. Like, it didn't really feel like a clear ending. It was just like, I'm just gonna stop talking about these people. That's what I felt like.
But it does kind of feel like the cycle has
real,
ended,
though.
Yeah, it did feel a little hopeful, and then like, even though like I don't know, at the end, Kathy and Hareton, like, she was so mean to him that like about him not being able to read, and then it's just like, and then one day she decided to stop being mean, and now they love each other, and I was just like,
I was like,
him.
She said, "You're holding my terrible bullying against me. You're holding my actions against me." That was yesterday. Hello? Come on. Now I'm kidnapped here and I'm bored.
Do you want to
kiss? On. Forgive me faster. Like, that was so funny, actually, to me. I was like, what?
This is like, I don't know. Yes, a story of revenge, I guess. There's something here, like, outside of this, and in outside of like revenge, there's something here about decay. Just like moral decay, like the way that, like, I don't know, everybody's specific thing that they are holding on to, whether it's a slight or whatever it might be, is like making them a worse person. And the way that like all of them in this little microcosm entrapped in these two houses, just feeding off of each other's worst traits, makes everybody worse. And that seems to be the main idea here, is that like everybody gets worse, it keeps going, the cycle keeps going, and then finally at the end it breaks. Is that a story of revenge? I don't really think so. I think it's more about just like what happens if all of your work you follow all of your worst impulses. I don't think that's a very compelling story, but I think that is what we got.
But I think the reason that when I started looking up books that were like this other book that I was reading, like looking for this specific genre, I think the decay aspect is really what tied it back to that. Because those other books that I'm talking about are about these like palaces or castles or mansions that are long in disrepair. They are themselves decaying. The characters are decaying. Like the entire ecosystem of that world within that castle is like falling to ruin. And I think this book really captures that feeling of just like characters and people falling to ruin. I think you could make a case for the fact that these people are like not even living in the real world. They're in some sort of like purgatory, like just endlessly being tortured by their choices, right? There are times where this book feels otherworldly. And so I think, I agree with you. I don't know because the thing about it being a story of revenge is I don't know that it actually ends up saying anything about revenge, right? Like I don't think it actually has a point to make about revenge, but I do think it has a point to make about like the decaying of the human experience, right? Like it does make some strong arguments about like what happens when you do all the worst things to the people around you and all of those people do the worst things to the people around them.
And like nobody stops you, right? There's a lot here also about like bad parenting and about like having like all these kids having like a lack of boundaries and a lack of like education and enforceable morality, right? Even Catherine at the beginning, she's running around kind of wild with Heathcliff, and she spends like a month with the other family, with the Lintons, and then she comes back and she's like, she's got some education, right?
And it was just a month.
And so there's like
They were
so
like
much...
up at dawn. She went to bed at midnight. They were like, no, we're getting it. You're going to learn. We don't have that much time. We know you're sick, but
and so there was a lot here too about like not like feeding each other's like worst impulses, but like about the lack of boundaries and the lack of education, which I think is interesting in the context of like a Victorian novel, because for as much as this like whole thing is so out of genre and is so about like these bad people doing bad things, I do think that it is saying something about morality, or it at least is showing you like, see how bad it is when you got no morals, which
morals when you have no morals, huh? Is that? I think we just got it. I think this is where I think we just figured it out. I think we just unlocked the secret. Call up the English teachers. We figured it out.
Sponsored by the Moors.
Do the Moors have sponsorships? Today we're on the Panelists, sponsored by the Moors.
All of them.
All of them.
They're beckoning you. Answer their call.
We talk a lot about, we talked about in the last couple of books, we talked about in all of our books, like where women are at in these books as compared to where they are at in the time. Do you feel like Bronte's female characters are ahead of their time? Do you feel like she is pioneering female characters, or do you think she is, are her female characters like setting women back? Like, where do you think she lands in the discussion of like women at the time?
Every woman in this book got kidnapped multiple times. They just kept getting kidnapped
and like hit. And like there was a lot of violence. Like they kept getting hit.
There was a lot of violence.
There was multiple like deaths because of pregnancy or consumption via pregnancy. The women are not having a good time in the story.
Well, it had also, every time it happened, it read like it should be something that was like shocking to us and to the characters, but it was like, how could you not, like, this is all that is happening constantly, where like everyone is always getting hit or someone's like dying or something, like or you're getting kidnapped, and it's like this is over and over and over again, like this vicious like cycle. And I hate to say that, it lost its like shock value, but around the 900th page, which is how long this book felt, I was like, well, yeah, like someone's gonna get kidnapped or like someone's gonna die of a cough. Yeah, like it was just, so it just, I don't know. It was very different than I was expecting.
I wonder if, because all these characters also, all these female characters, their lives are very much wrapped up in the men around them. I mean, I think about like Catherine dying on her bed, like having a like crazy fit about Heathcliff and all of that. And then I almost wonder, I'd have to look it up. I wonder if this book even passes what is it called? The Bechdel test? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Where like female characters have to have a conversation that doesn't involve a man. Like, I wonder if this book would even pass that, because I feel like every conversation that the female characters have is in regards to a man, and usually Heathcliff.
Yeah, because even Kathy and Nellie, it's talking about like her dad.
When Nellie and Kathy were like going on a walk randomly, they were just talking about like how nice the weather was for a little
And
bit.
flowers.
For a while. Yeah, like that's the
Yeah.
only interaction that I can think of off the top of my head where I was like, this is not about a man, it's about the weather, and they're having a great time. It was so nice for like 2 seconds, and then they were like, well, we stumbled upon a man. Let's see what that's about.
I just looked it up. It says that, yes, it does. Oh, the movie passed 2 of the 3 of the tests, is what this says here.
A movie.
But it doesn't tell me which ones. And then this answer I got just said, yes, it passes it primarily through the interactions between Catherine and Nellie. So they have a conversation on the moors where they're like, wow, the weather's great. Now, can we get back to talking about these men?
Really clearing that Bechdel test.
Yeah.
Just that one moment.
There's a way that there isn't a lot of agency here for the women, which is like what you would expect of the time period. And we've seen that in the other romances as well, right? Where, the Pamela and the Lizzie Bennet and the Jane Eyre have to make decisions within limited amount of agency that they have over their lives. And a lot of times that is via marriage, by improving their station via marriage. And we see that here. I think it's almost more heightened because they're like trapped and often kidnapped in like one location, where there's a little more freedom of movement for some of our other characters that we've read about. And one of the main things that we see as like an active decision on the part of a woman is Catherine deciding to marry Edgar versus Heathcliff. And it is a decision that she regrets, sort of. I don't know. It's like kind of, she bounces all over the place. There were portions of this book where I believe she really did like Edgar, and it tells us that for a little while they were kind of happy, and so
We breeze over that part of the story. Not
yeah,
important.
they're like, and they were kind of happy, and then Heathcliff appeared again. But it's like the one like major decision that she makes, and she kind of like lives and dies by it. It is a huge portion of what, like, why in the end she's just like dead. She just gives up.
And you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but doesn't she say that one of the reasons why she decides to marry him is because she thinks that it will give her the opportunity to help Heathcliff like rise up and like do better if they're together?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
And Nellie says that's the stupidest reason you've given yet.
Tuesday, you give a lot of dumb reasons, but like,
I love that whole scene. I can't lie. That whole
I do
entire
love that
scene
scene.
was so good. Where she's like, well, I love him because I just do. And she's like, you're an idiot.
I do like how outspoken the women are, because I think reading books from a similar time, it's focused on being, last time when you were giving context, it was like the angel of the house or something.
Yes.
And all of these women are kind of terrible,
Mhm.
and they don't really hide it. Even Catherine, what breakdown does she have where Edgar's like about to leave and then she cries and he stays? But he
When
sees like
it's
a
at the
different
very
side of-
beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She
She,
like, slaps Nellie or something.
Nellie,
He's like
shakes
on
the
the
baby.
he's like on the porch. He's like outside ready to leave, and I'm like, run, just get out
Yeah,
there,
just keep
go.
going.
And he looks
And
back and sees her.
She said, "I'm just a girl."
Yeah.
I'm just a girl. But then, like, also having Lockwood leave, this killed me when his first thought was like, imagine how different her life would be if she had tried to romance me. I could be taking her away from all of this. So the fact that she was also just so rude to this random man that did nothing, I did kind of love that. So, like, just them showing their attitudes. Even Nellie always gave her opinion, and I liked that. But everything else, I agree with everything you guys said.
That's a
They
crazy
were
thing
my
for Lockwood to
favorite
think
scene.
too. Like what a
It
like
is.
man
Okay.
savior thing to think. Our life
Because
would
I
be
could have
so
changed
much
this
better
for
with
you.
me.
Lockwood was such a weirdo character to me. Like from Go, where he goes to this like crazy mansion, he gets attacked by dogs. Heathcliff is
Mhm.
rude to him, and then he leaves and he's like, I think I'll visit tomorrow. I was like, sir, good sir, whatever happens here, you kind of deserve it. Not to
Yeah,
victim blame,
You're
but
not welcome. What are you doing?
Actually, now that I'm thinking about the dog attack, that's one of the things I liked about this, because it reminded me of the movie Clue with the dogs in the very beginning. And I was like, oh, this is a bunch of bad people that are going to be read to filth. And that kind of came true. It wasn't funny, though.
Clue is the much more enjoyable story of the two, for sure.
I think that if we'd read this like right after Pamela, I'd feel a lot different.
Mm.
I really would. But like I loved Jane Eyre so much. And I was like really like I knew that this wasn't going to be a romance, but I didn't think that I was going to deeply dislike it in the way that I did. And so I think that also like coming off the heels of like reading a book that I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And then coming into this and being like, they're related by blood.
They live
You know?
together in
They
a
live together.
house.
Which I mean which is not a fair like assumption to make, but I think that like this and then Pamela feel a lot more like connected to me. Yeah, I don't know. I think that probably would have changed the way that I felt about it, because like in comparison to Pamela and like her interactions with men and everything that happened there, this is a revelation.
Yeah, I think it is important to recognize that these female characters, though awful, do have a lot more agency over their life. Like a lot of the really, not all, but many of the bad situations they are getting into are brought about often by really terrible choices that they are making. Whereas with Pamela, she is kind of like, she is sort of at the whim of the world a little bit. And these female characters are to a degree as well. But like Lizzy said, they're very outspoken. They're like speaking their mind. And they're unlike Pamela, who is kind of just like trying to like hold on to her virtue for whatever. These characters are like, here's my virtue. Let's go. Just throw it out the window. Let's go.
We're all ready to
There's
fight.
also that one scene where like Catherine locks Heathcliff and what's her like Edward in the kitchen, Edgar in the kitchen, and she's like, "No, duke it out, because he's gonna wipe the floor with you." She's like, "I can't wait." She's like cheering from the
Throws
sidelines,
the key
like,
in the
"Get
fire.
She's like, "Get him!" Which is so. I was cracking up. I was like, "That's hilarious."
I will say that like part of the big difference between Pamela and these characters is class, though. Like Pamela's big thing is that she's a servant and she actually doesn't have any escape outside of the only thing that she has is her virtue. Literally,
Yeah.
these
Pamela
women are
versus
in.
Nellie.
Yeah,
Very
the
interesting.
Pamela Nellie are like closer than like a Pamela and a Catherine, who does, you know, a lot of these women are set to inherit, and that's why they are used as pawns. And Heathcliff's worst revenge plot ever. So they do have that
Written
little
in crayon.
I will get you back.
Just you wait
better.
2 more generations and you'll see.
You know what? Let's talk about Heathcliff. What does he represent in this novel? Is he a force of evil? Is he a victim? Is he a victim of evil? Is he both? Like, who is Heathcliff to this story?
I don't think he knows who he is,
Mm,
so it's
that's
hard
good.
for us to know who he is. No, I'm kidding. Well, let's all piggyback off of Jaysen. Jaysen,
Yeah,
what do you
what do you
think?
think?
You go first.
Obviously, he's like a very evil character, and I don't know. Like, the reason I kind of brought up that I kind of feel like this story could even exist in like a purgatory or hell, like it isn't, to me, it doesn't necessarily exist in the real world, is because Heathcliff is more of like, he's just like a darkness, right? Like, and the fact that his plan involves like several generations worth of bad things happening, like that's not like a normal person. That's like something that like someone who's like possessed by the devil would do. Like that is like such a like dark.
It's like a caricature of an evil man
Yeah.
without the like.
He's so like, he's such an evil, dark presence that like his plans are so far flung into the future that it feels unreal. Like in even him, like when I picture him in my head, he like walks into the room and like a dark cloud follows him, you know, like he's just, I guess, you know, you can make the case that he's a victim, but like, is what he goes through as a child worth the incredible amount of awful that he puts onto these people later in life? I don't think so. But I think it's a hard case to make of this being a character that is like a victim as a kid and then turns that around to be that as an adult, because he did have people that liked him as a kid. Like he kind of had one person in his life who was crappy to him as a kid, right? Like, or if I'm misremembering, but then he turns around and like makes everyone's life hell.
It seems like, I mean, there are a lot of people that were racist and terrible
Oh, yeah, that's
to
true.
him as
Yeah.
well, but his entire thing was that he was just like, I am miserable and unhappy, and I want everyone else around me to be as miserable and unhappy as possible, and that's all that he wanted. I actually really like the thought that this is just all of these people in purgatory, and I feel like that makes me like the like the book a lot more, being like, okay, no, this is actually purgatory, and then at the end of the book it just starts all over again. And that's it. And they all like continue to live out this cycle of just like terrible decisions and just like unhappiness and just bitter resentment towards themselves and towards each other, because like Heathcliff spends the majority of his life, because I don't know how old like Catherine was when she died, but he spends the majority of his life being like bitter and resentful because he blames himself for her death. And so like he's stuck in that, and like everyone seems to be just like stuck on like the decisions that they made, that they're like, if I hadn't done this like one thing, then I wouldn't do this and this, and they're just like stuck on that, and they're unhappy, and everyone else around them is unhappy, and it's just like a vicious cycle throughout the entire thing. And I think Heathcliff is just, I don't even know if I would say like evil, yes, but like more just bitter and resentful than evil. I don't know.
I think I have kind of Heathcliff is very interesting to pair up against Jane Eyre. Both of those characters in Jane Eyre, Jane had the poor childhood that Heathcliff had to a certain degree, and Jane as a child started like she could have become Heathcliff in the sense that she was like very passionate, and she's like, I'll never call you aunt again, and she had so much resentment, and it was through like this whole like harsh charity school and the influence of her friend whose name is escaping me right now, that who like Helen Burns, that like she like became a different version of herself. And we see that scene where she's with Rochester and he's like, tell me your tale of woe, and she's like, I don't have one, I'm just an orphan who grew up in this charity school and everyone I love died. And he's like, no tale of woe? Like that is your tale of woe, right? So her reaction to her childhood is very different than what we see Heathcliff, but they start at very similar places. And then you have Heathcliff versus Rochester, and I think that they too like share a lot of kindred spirit in terms of feeling like they've been wronged by life, and that giving them permission to act in the way that they feel is that they can do whatever they want. And we see Rochester do that to like we could not forgive him either in a lot of things that he did, like keeping a wife in the attic, or fooling
by the way,
Jane.
someone should check on the Brontes, because there's a lot of locking people in rooms. Okay, I just want to point out.
But isn't that I think there is something to examine about how many of their stories revolve around people being trapped in a location and like where they grew up. And I mean, but we don't have time for that in this podcast. In this episode.
Anne's story is supposed to be the worst for that. I think it's like running away or something. Yeah,
they must have had terrible childhoods. There's just no way they had happy childhoods.
Mari, I know. Like, I cut you off again. I'm sorry. But
I quit this podcast, actually.
Well, unfortunately, that is not allowed according to the terms and conditions.
I'm trapped.
In the Uber. Yeah, you are actually. I learned something from Wuthering Heights, and it's to just kidnap people.
Yeah, it's the wife in the attic clause in the podcast agreement that you signed.
But I think that the thing that's really interesting is Jane being like, yeah, like my life was terrible and I had like really hard things happen, but like, yeah, that's life. Everyone has like bad, terrible things happen. And Heathcliff goes, my life is actually the worst, and it's worse than anyone else's, and anything bad that happens to anyone else is not as bad as anything that has ever happened to me. And I feel like that's probably why he and Charlotte sort of like clicked, because they both have that same like level of extreme where they're like, if this happened to me, like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. It's worse than anything else that anyone else could feel, because I feel so much more like deeply than anyone else that has ever existed.
I
Once
do think
again,
that
I want to go to middle children, and it's being written by a middle child, but again,
I think that for me, like ultimately, I do feel for Heathcliff. I do think that he is a product of certain circumstances. Does he do the worst thing possible? It's like those circumstances, yes. But it isn't just the abuse, physical abuse. And here's the thing is that there's a way that you can't really even say truly because we are getting his story like third or fourth hand and it's being glossed over. It will be just like, and then they beat him up and we didn't see him for a month because they beat him so badly and blah, blah, blah. Let's move on with the story or whatever it was. So we don't actually know the full extent to how terrible this guy was treated. He was an orphan. He was brought to this house. At first, he was treated like a son in that home. And then he had like the indignity of being forced into, after growing up like in the same or similar station to these other kids, being treated as a servant and physically abused and like kind of emotionally and like manipulated and like really living in poor circumstances. And there is like, at least some sort of racialized element here. Like, historians can't say for sure. And like, there it isn't said in so many words inside of it, but he's described as a racialized kind of other, and the words that are used to describe him are words that would have referred to either like a South Asian or an Arab person. And the father finds him in Liverpool, which was the hub for the transatlantic slave trade. So there are like clues here that point to this man being also kind of racialized other, and regardless of that, like the extent of the abuse that he's went through and the missing 3 years and everything that he did, we don't know how bad this man's life was. Does it excuse the amount of kidnapping that he did? Probably not. I don't know that anything could, but also
one kidnapping we could excuse. One kidnapping,
you get.
2, he's up to like 4 or 5. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. It's too much.
But I did have moments where I was like, I feel for this guy. He's just doing the worst thing and then of course it like does tip into this place where it's like the decay now. Like it has now gotten so bad that he does really stop feeling like a character or a person. He's just like this little ball of rage.
Can I tell you what I want to be true, even though I'm sure it's not?
Please do.
Because Nellie's present, and I want to think, after reading Jane Eyre, I was like, okay, this is maybe an author who is in love with a married man. After reading this, I wanted to imagine a writer feeling trapped and letting out all of her rage through Heathcliff of how much can I mess with people and torment people and get out all of my anger as a man. Which it's not what she did, but I was like, it felt like a little bit of an outlet messing with all of these characters and just making them terrible. But more likely, it could have been based on a real person.
But it could also be both, right? Like it can, like two things can be true. It can be, people who are victims often have a lot of that rage within them too. So it can be both. It can be a story of, being told from the perspective of someone who has been victimized, but it can also be a story of rage because of that. I think both of those things can be true for sure. So now we get to the most important question. The reason we read Wuthering Heights, how does this relate to the modern romance genre? Do we feel like this book is still alive and well? Even though this is not a romance book, do we think there are parts of this book that still live on in the romance genre of today?
Can we talk about the movie trailer?
I haven't seen the movie trailer, but you can't.
I haven't seen the movie trailer?
I decided not to watch it until after I'd read the book, but you can talk about it. That's okay. I don't mind.
No, I was just curious about everyone's thoughts now that like we've read the book versus like the movie trailer, because everyone was so up in arms about the movie trailer and being like, oh my God, this is not what the book is. And it like now that I've read the book, I'm like, well, maybe this is better. I don't know. Maybe we should stop complaining. Just let them do it. Let them cook.
Let's watch the movie.
Let's just see what happens, because I just read the book and
it just follows like the first half, like if it's just gonna follow the original like Catherine, or if it'll actually continue after her death or not, because it looks very romantic. But I was just gonna say the first time I saw Wuthering Heights referenced in a romance was a One Direction fan fiction that got so big it was published.
Yes, I literally was gonna say this.
Yeah, so in After, he's like compared to Heathcliff a lot, and they use the quote of whatever his soul is made of, his and mine are the same type of thing, and it's used as like he's terrible, but we're also just obsessed with each other, and that's great. So it's just referenced a lot in books.
This was literally the thing I was gonna say, and the reason that I think that this even enters into chat, it's in after Bella Swan's favorite book is also Wuthering Heights. I'm pretty sure
Is it?
it's like in Twilight. There are a lot of like YA heroines in like these romances where Wuthering Heights is like very referenced as like a favorite or like a thing to look up to, in a way that now, having read this book, I'm like, okay.
Can I say something controversial?
Uh-huh.
When I read that line, whatever like souls are made of, his and I are the same, I was like, girl, you've met 3 men. Like, you know 5 people total. Like, what are you talking? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I wish I kept that line out of context. Like, I wish I could still enjoy that line, because I was like,
line.
you don't know. I was like, what do you mean?
But this is
like,
like
you can count all the
exactly-
people you know in your hands,
This is
including the
exactly
servants.
the thing about like the Wuthering Heights being referenced in other romances, where like I had heard that line also, and in context, I expected it to be like such an emotional declaration of love, and it's this like young girl who has absolutely no conception of love, who has met 2 people total, and it is in the middle of a very immature sort of outpouring of love, so that in context you're like, this is what people, but that is how I feel like Wuthering Heights is treated in media a lot of times, where like the disconnect between what actually happens and what the way that it is presented, it exists, and in a way that I think goes back to this like brooding hero, just like because he is dark and handsome and tall. I don't know,
And rich through
and
means
rich.
that we refuse to
True.
verify.
You're
This
right,
all sounds
and-
great. Who are we talking about?
Listen, he will kidnap you and your friends, but
Mhm.
other than that,
Oh
Flashback
no!
to
I
single.
hope that.
Oh no!
What will I do with myself?
He is a homeowner.
I feel like you can. I mean, if he has 2, I didn't realize he had 2 houses. He can kidnap as many people as he wants. He's rich and he has 2 houses.
Lots of rooms.
I was being a little
lots
harsh.
of locks.
I was being a little mean.
I think we're.
Every room has a lock, including all the closets,
Just don't have
just
pets.
in case. Sorry. Okay.
Oh my god! I think when I was reading this, where I see this a lot in the modern romance novel is definitely like in the dark romance genre, and I don't know if, or even especially in like the bully romance genre. There's a lot of books on Book Talk that are like really popular that have this like enemies to lovers, but really it's just like a bully to lovers situation. And I at one point I read one of these and I remember walking away from it being like, what? Like, this is what people are like losing it over? Like, this is horrific. And I kind of had that same feeling about Wuthering Heights, where I read it and I was like, these people are awful to each other. This is not romantic, except in a lot of those dark romances where you have that bully nature, it is played off as
Just the dude.
romance, right? And it's like that feeling I had a lot when I was reading this, and I feel like that is something that has kind of survived from this story.
Where it's like, he's mean because he likes you, because he's so obsessed with you, he can't deal with his feelings. He has to kidnap you
Exactly.
because he can't
what
talk
it
to
is.
you.
The level of obsession. Like, he was going to crawl into her grave with her. Like, the
Mhm.
yelling out at her ghost, come back. There was a lot of, I'd burn the world for you, but instead
Haunt
it's, I'm
me
taking
just so
your
I-
home, killing your
yeah.
husband, and taking your child as well.
It's like,
Yeah.
well, I can't burn the world because we're in purgatory, so the world is
But
8 acres.
So your
But-
sister-in-law's dog?
Yeah.
But even
Yeah.
when you say that, Lizzy, like when you explain those parts of the book of like, if you were to sell this book to someone and be like, oh, there's this man and like he's so in love, he wants to like crawl into the grave with this woman he loves. Like there are, there are people who be like, oh my God, that sounds like the most romantic book ever. But then you read it and you're like, it is in no way
Yup.
But
romantic.
the book is so long, and like that takes up 25%
so
of
small.
the entire book, and then it spends the rest of the book like trying to, like, he uses that to try to justify his actions for the rest of the book.
I
And
also
so
sorry. Now I'm cutting you.
You can
off.
cut Niah off. She
you can cut me off. Yeah, you can cut me off. I don't feel any guilt now. Thank you.
I was gonna say that I was thinking about Lizzy actually while I was reading this, because during Jane Eyre, she was like, I don't get, they barely talk to each other about Jade and Rochester. And she's like, I don't know why they fell in love. And we were all like, are you kidding? Like, they
I
had these
had that you
interactions.
talked to two men.
And okay, and then in this book, though, we just really get told that this is like a soul changing, your soul and my soul kind of love. We don't actually watch these people have meaningful
No.
in
We
conversations
don't
with each
watch
other.
them. We don't watch them, but we do hear them say, like, they would spend all their days together. He would, like,
They go on
count
walks.
down, like, he would write down and be like, this is the last time you looked at me, which is creepy. It'd be like they were running across the moors together and things like that. So they did spend a lot of time together as, like, children, and we see that, but we don't actually see any of the reasons, any of the, like, things that brought them together other than just, like, proximity.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
to be
So you just
fair,
have to believe. You just have to believe. The author
Yeah.
tells
Yeah.
you that they are in love and it's obsession and he wants to crawl into the grave. And you just have to go, okay, because you
Yeah,
don't
and that
get
they,
to
like,
see any of that.
know
Mm.
each other's darkest secrets or something. I think when she's dying and he comes rushing in to hold her or something, it's just that they've gone through a lot together. I had other readers in my head, like dark romance readers, that when I got to the end and he decided he wanted to stop tormenting those two kids because they resemble Catherine, I was like, I'm sure someone out there went, oh.
but also
Not me,
part of the
though.
reason we don't see all of that is because the story is told from Nellie's perspective, right? She can't be
Right.
on
Yep.
every date with them. Like, at some point, she
No.
has to do her
She's
chores.
stalking them.
There are
Well, she
dishes.
should
There's
be.
sweeping. Like, she's got stuff to do.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, this cannot be a romance because we don't actually watch people fall in love, right? This is like the
Mm-mm.
story of two people who maybe fell in love. I don't know. I wasn't there to see it. But that's what makes, like, the fascination with, like, the obsession and whatever kind of wild to me, because you just kind of have to take it at face value. You just have to believe that this is true, that these people are haunting everyone around them because their souls are made of the same thing. And you just have
What
to go, oh, okay.
I believe that they believe that that's true. Like, and with my whole heart, I believe that they were like, this is a once in a lifetime love, and no one can feel the way that we feel, and that's why we can do whatever we want and treat people in whatever way we want. But, like, that's not love in any way, actually. So, I mean, I don't even know how this could almost be called a romance. There isn't anything romantic about the relationship that these people have with one another. There isn't, it seems like there's barely any kind of, like, love in the story whatsoever. It seems like Nellie loves her charge, that the Charlotte, what
Ayrton.
do they, whatever her name is, I forget.
Kathy.
Kathy.
Kathy,
I'm
yeah,
completely
Kathy.
wrong. I'm making up names now.
Yeah.
But, like, it seems like that she loves her. She's like, I loved her so much.
Yes,
She was
yeah.
so sweet. It seems like that there's love there, but it seems like her father loves her, but it doesn't really seem like there's any other kind of love throughout the rest of the book even. So it's very difficult to see. I mean, it just seems like such a reach to me to say that this is a romance, or even to, like, imply that there's real love here when it's like this much. I keep gesturing, and if we're on a podcast, this people
It's
feel this.
very a little amount.
If you
little
want to
amount.
see all of
Everyone's
Niah's
listening.
gesturing of how little that love there is,
Gesturing.
make sure to watch this on YouTube. But I think even by today's standards, like, how often do we talk about romance books written even today where we feel like we just have to take it at face value? The author just expects us to take it at face value that the characters love each other. It doesn't give us any reasons for them to love each other. It doesn't show us them falling in love. They're just, oh, they're in love, and we have to take that at face value. And I think, that it's interesting to think, because we so often talk about in these episodes, like, how things or tropes or good things from these books have survived through time. It's interesting to look at something like that, which I think is a writing failure on an author's part of not showing, of trying to talk about two characters being in love and not actively showing us why they're in love. And it's interesting to think about that writing failure has also survived, centuries of time of, like, not being able to write characters falling in love in a way that makes it believable.
I think, though, now, like, in a lot of romance where we're like, okay, we don't see them falling in love, but there are, like, sort of shortcuts and tropes and things that people use to imply that, like, that help that, what is it? I think verisimilitude, that helps you believe, like, what you're being told, that they are falling in love, even though we don't see it. Like, so there are more like, I mean, Wuthering Heights doesn't have those like those traditional tropes of a romance book, or the traditional tropes of the genre that we're used to now. Whereas like there are some stories that I read where I like some romances that I read where I'm like, if I really think about this, I did not see them falling in love, but I know that when the authors like in their hands brushed and there was like a spark of electricity, that it's like, okay, that's love. That's what that, like things like that, where like now there are some,
Or
there are
one of
more
them just walked in
shortcuts.
socks across the carpet. It's one of the two things.
You want static electricity or
Or love.
Or, and you know what? We'll
to be
never
fair
know.
We'll never
Because
know.
we're not going to see it.
Emily Bronte, to be fair to her, I don't think that she wanted us to see them fall in love, right? That was not the aim here at all. She purposefully is jumping in time and removing the point of view at key places. I would like to think that she would be haunting the moors, wailing like a banshee if she knew that her book was referenced in after a One Direction fan fiction. I don't think that was her intention at all. I do think it's interesting to think
I don't
about
think she'd
like,
be mad at it.
I think she would be mad. I think she would.
She's just
She hates
laughing.
people.
She's
She
laughing
hates
somewhere.
people. She hates people so much. She would be like, I wrote this misery and this and what
We're
you
like,
took away is
It's
so
very compelling. I'm kidding. I haven't read it. I'm just.
I did read it. Do not ever do that to yourself. But I do think that it's interesting to see the things that were taken from here and romanticized. I don't think that they are like romantic here, but I do think that there are a lot of like tropes and sort of things that are romanticized in modern sort of romance.
It's so interesting though, because what she's saying is this is bad. This did not turn out well for them. They were obsessed with one another, like to the point of like distraction, to the point of like not being able to like consider other people or think about other things, and it ruined their lives. And like it's very clear. They said maybe we could do it, but seriously, like, so it is very interesting that that's what they took, like, it's taken away from this, because it's like this didn't actually turn out well for them. Everyone died in the worst way possible, and they like ruined generation of people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't think it's a romance, or else telling it through Nellie's perspective would be really interesting, because I don't know if Nellie would be picking up on that. Also, the angle of maybe she liked Heathcliff. But the moments I think that did inspire some other books as well was the slight supernatural element that Nellie kept reeling in and trying to find a logical reason for. But like Catherine, when she was slowly dying, was like seeing Heathcliff. Like they were having all of these weird, he was seeing visions, the ghosts, the voices.
Like in Jane Eyre. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it inspired a lot of stories.
Yeah, I think both of these books, Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, have that very gothic, haunting vibe, and I feel like that definitely has, of all of that, just that vibe and that aesthetic has really survived the test of time, because there are still books written today with that exact same aesthetic and world and feel to them, which is very interesting.
It makes me want to read a lot more gothic romances, like legitimately. I was like, I love this atmosphere. So
I love this atmosphere. I just hate the people that are living in it.
Hate it so much.
Oh my goodness.
Like the idea of this, hate the reality.
Before I wrap us up and talk about the next book that we're going to be discussing on our next episode, the question we have to ask Lizzy: has your rating changed? Are you still is it still a 4 out of 5 for you? It's okay if it is. This is a safe space.
It could be a 5 out of 5.
Lizzy's like, I'm giving it back that star.
They're just terrible people. I don't know. And I don't like that part, but I was entertained.
But it's kind of the same feeling of when Mari was talking about like watching terrible people do terrible things. You know, it's kind of the same as like watching like The White Lotus, right? Like there's something to watching horrible people, that horrible rich people be horrible to each other, right?
And also,
I don't watch
everything.
I know too many horrible rich people in real life to like watching them do horrible things.
I do not want to watch horrible rich people do horrible things.
It's also just an entire book of Nellie being like, "Don't do that," and then being like, "I'm gonna do it anyway." And
Girl,
so I was kind of
you're
laughing.
the one who gave it 4 stars.
I was actually giggling. I was like, "Nellie, why are you still here?"
Nellie said, she did eventually go find another job.
I think if you view
I
this
think
as
so,
like kind
yeah.
of a dark comedy, that's how it works best to me. If like, 'cause I was
Yeah,
laughing every
I
time
was
Nellie said
laughing.
something. I was laughing.
Yeah.
Again, it was that the intention? Who can say? But
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, even
Catherine's
when
death is so melodramatic that
it's so
I was laughing. Like,
melodramatic.
it is
yes,
not
Oh,
supposed to be a funny scene, but it was crazy. Like, she is just in hysterics, like, "Wah!" Like crazy. I was, and I thought it was funny, and it wasn't funny. But there were points where I was like, I mean, I think while I was listening to an audiobook, my face was like, like, what is happening?
Yeah. Like, what's when they're at the table? I don't remember if we talked about this. And I think Heathcliff threatens Kathy after she's like, you took our money, you took our property. He threatens her. And she's like, well, you know who's going to fight you on my behalf? And just volunteers the guy that's terrified of Heathcliff. I was cackling because he was like, no.
I even like it from the beginning when the ghost of Catherine first shows up, and Lockwood is like she grabs his hand, and he's like sawing her hand on like
Yeah.
the broken glass.
Yeah. That's what I messaged you guys. This is terrifying.
He's like, let go, let go. I don't know. There's something so like funny about all of this that if you just consider it a dark comedy,
Somebody should
you
make
know,
a version of
Lockwood.
this book into a movie, but like really hit home on the comedic aspect of it.
Yeah. I
I think it's
still
coming
think
out next
Lockwood
year.
being it.
Who is playing Heathcliff? I know that Margot Robbie's playing
Jacob
Catherine, right?
Elordi.
Who is
Oh,
that? What is he in?
He was in what's the with
He's in
Zendaya?
Priscilla, and he's also Euphoria.
Euphoria. That's the one. Yeah.
I started to look up Wuthering Heights, and hold on. Oh, never
Watch
mind.
the trailer right now.
It said Wuthering Heights video game, and I was like, excuse me, but it's Wuthering Waves, which is a different video game. But I was like,
Oh.
that can't, there cannot,
That's
there's
You're just
no way there's
escaping
a.
He-
ghosts on the moors.
he's the dude with the like face with the
Yeah,
like
he is.
weird.
He was a white man of the month for a while. Jacob Elordi.
Oh, I see.
He's
Yeah.
is he that? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Interesting choices all around. Yes.
Also,
Yep,
I
that
think
was
it's
everyone's reaction when that casting came out.
Yeah.
Let's see it.
very interesting. And then Nellie's character is being played by an Asian actress, so that's a very
Okay.
interesting take on that as
How
well.
old is she?
How old is she?
Yeah.
The actress Hong
She's
Chow.
middle-aged.
She was born in 1979, so she's in her 40s,
Okay.
50s, almost 50s, so late 40s.
So kind of how I pictured.
But she looks pretty young. Like she could pass for like 30s, I think, just looking at this random picture of her on the internet. So that is our discussion of Wuthering Heights. We are so curious what you think of Wuthering Heights. Is it your favorite book? Is it your least favorite book? Do you love it? Do you refuse to read it? Please let us know in the comments down below. If you're listening on to the podcast or if you're watching on YouTube, please let us know in the comments what you think of Wuthering Heights. We would love to hear your thoughts. Next up on our romance journey, we are going to take a break from the Gothic. Well, we think we're going to take a break. I haven't really read too much about this book, so I assume it's fun. Hopefully it is. The next book we're going to read is called The Black Moth by Georgette Hare. And we're going to be reading this because it supposedly introduces the concept of the historical romance. So where a lot of the books we've been reading are set in their present day, this is a book that is written in the 1900s, and it is telling a story that is historical in context. So it'll be kind of a different view of what we've been reading so far. So that should be interesting. We have a question to pose to you. We are considering, it is a little out of timeline, but we are considering a couple different books. And one of the ones that came up when we were searching like important romance books was The Three Musketeers. So we are going to put a poll up on YouTube of whether or not you think The Three Musketeers is a romance book. And depending on your answer, we will decide if we are going to add it to our reading list or not, because we are considering adding that to our current run of books we're reading for the podcast. So look for that on our YouTube channel. And speaking of which, if you would like to continue listening to the panelists, I almost forgot the name of our podcast for a second. If you'd like to continue listening to the panelists, you can watch the podcast on YouTube at the Panelist Podcast, or you can listen to us on Spotify and on Apple podcasts as well. iCast, Apple Podcasts, I don't know. But it is also the Panelists podcasts wherever you look in any of those places. And we would love it if you could like, comment on the podcast websites. Please leave a rating. Let us know what you think, because that helps us out a ton. And before we go, I want to make sure everyone has a chance to let you know where you can find them specifically. So, Niah, where can they find you on the internet?
I am at Novel Niah on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, and everywhere else.
Great. Mari, where can they find you?
I am at My Name is Marines on all social media sites, and then my homepage is marias.bindarybooks.com, where I cross-post all of my material.
Amazing. Lizzy?
I am Bumblebeezus on TikTok and YouTube, and Beezus Books on Instagram.
You can find me at EasyCat everywhere. And then I also have a homepage on Bindery, which is easycat.bindarybooks.com, where I post all of my different content. And you also get early access to all of these YouTube videos as well, which is super fun. Thank you all so... What?
I'm not on Twitter. I don't know why I said that. I panicked. I panicked. I'm not on Twitter.
I'm gonna go steal your username right now.
When you said Twitter, I was like, oh.
Wait a minute. Stop everything. We can't end the show yet because I am not on Twitter.
I can't. I don't want to lie. I don't lie to the people.
Speaking of unreliable narrators. Oh my God. Y'all, thank you so much for watching The Panelists or listening to it, however you chose to enjoy it. And we can't wait to see you next time for our next romance journey book.
Bye.